So it's kind of the same with supermarket. You just have to kind of know the game that they are playing, the way that they are trying to make good choices for them, but bad choices for you. There's a lot of nutritional theory out there, but then no matter how many books people read, then they're still like, but what should I actually buy? Because I think that's one of the main questions when it comes to anybody's health in general, just in the modern day. Like, you're just gonna go to the supermarket and then you maybe need a list, but even if you have a good list, still it doesn't tell you like which brand is.
Author, biohacker, and an award-winning health influencer. Our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Mr. Olli, who's going to be talking to us about surviving a supermarket and a lot. So welcome, Mr. Olli, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your personal health and well-being story and your current...
Yeah, thanks so much. So my story is that about 2 decades ago, I got the diagnosis for multiple sclerosis, and kind of that was my university. Before that, I also had asthma and also like not very good health in general. And then I just started by a miracle maybe, or by luck or something. I stumbled onto some good things that kind of opened my mind and my worldview for very strange things out of the norm. And that's kind of the journey that I'm still on. There were some really good authors in my country, Finland, but also some really good ones in the international market, like, about 20 years ago. And it's been very eye-opening journey for me to explore this whole health space, and because of that also like many other spaces, because they are so interconnected in so many ways. I think health in so many ways has so much to do with like everything. I'm trying to get back into the work life. I'm kind of, like they say in English, I'm in between jobs. So that would be a nice way to say it right now.
Right. Understood. Amazing. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that with us, and we're really glad to have you on the podcast today, and we can't wait to learn a lot more from you from this episode today. There's something very interesting you talk about is surviving a supermarket, and I also happen to read and hear more from you from some other episodes as well, and that's something very important today, right? Because today we are surrounded by so many products, so many companies, and we are sold so many things left and right. Like, either we are at home, it's on our devices, or we are going out of the supermarket. It's everywhere, right? So we are being sold a million of things, and we end up making the wrong choices because probably we didn't have the intention to know what we exactly need at the moment, and we end up making the wrong choices. And also, if we're not very informed under the name of healthy, we end up buying the wrong things, right? So this episode will provide so much clarity on that today. So to begin with, how did you come up with this thought that you need to survive a supermarket? Because supermarket is a fun place. I mean, everybody loves grocery shopping. We all love going there, right? So what do you mean by surviving a supermarket, and how did you come up with this whole idea?
I would say there is this whole system, like the health system and the food system, like the big system, consisting of some like really big institutions, and then there's us, we people who might have our maybe health problems sometimes. It's a very difficult, problematic relationship, but it's a necessary one, because in the modern system, the system has kind of taken over everything. We don't have the food system that we used to have hundreds of years ago. Like, the supermarket is basically what we have. And of course, sometimes we might have some small shops also, but everybody kind of almost has to shop in the supermarkets. And the problem with that relationship is that the other part of the relationship, like the big system in general, it acts like a pathological liar and a psychopath. Like, they say that they like care about our health, but they actually don't. They're just corporations trying to make money. And they use some of that really big money to do PR and advertising and branding, and they are really good trying to look authoritative, trying to look trustworthy, trying to look scientific and things like that. But we can't just they are lying to us. I'm not going to the supermarket. Well, the next day you're probably still going to the supermarket. So what do you do? Like, if you're stuck in a relationship where the other person is a pathological liar and a psychopath, well, you just kind of have to get red pilled. You have to see the reality, and then you have to kind of learn to navigate it. Even if you're in a relationship with a really bad person, there can be some good moments there, or, you know, there can be some topics that are actually fine. If they like tennis also, you can just talk with them about tennis, and it's actually quite an okay day. So it's kind of the same with supermarket. You just have to kind of know the game that they are playing, the way that they are trying to make you make good choices for them, but bad choices for you, and try to make it more of a win-win relationship. They're not going to put any effort really, or maybe very little effort into trying to make it a win-win relationship, because the whole big system in general actually profit. I think the way I usually teach these things is that we just go to the tactical. Like, there's a lot of nutritional theory out there, but then no matter how many books people read, then they're still like, but what should I actually buy? Because I think that's one of the main questions when it comes to anybody's health in general, just in the modern day. Like, you're just gonna go to the supermarket and then you maybe need a list, but even if you have a good list, still it doesn't tell you like which brand is the actually high quality one and which is not, because there are some really significant quality differences between different products, different brands, and science doesn't tell you anything really about those quality differences, or like most health experts can't really tell you which company is trustworthy and which is not. Well, nowadays I see more health experts, at least in the international field, who actually will tell you the specific brands and the specific products that are the really good ones and the ones that you can really trust, who are not these big psychopathic corporations or something like that. But I think that's the conversation that I'm always trying to promote. Like, let's talk the actuals, let's talk about the specifics, let's talk about the real things, not some scientific theory, because I also see a lot of that scientific theory, and it's actually on the rise because everybody wants to seem so authoritative, like you have to be this big scientific person so that anybody will listen to you, so then you will talk science, and then the people will be just confused, like, okay, now I know a lot of things, but I don't still know what to eat. So I'm kind of trying to bring it back to that, because for me, my story is that I didn't go to university or something to study nutrition. I tried to heal myself, so I had to find out the hard way what are the products that actually heal me and what are the products that actually harm me. And it's been quite a journey. It's kind of like playing this detective, like food detective. You have to have that kind of mindset, because like when you're a detective and you're looking for the criminals, like they're not gonna advertise themselves like, hey, here, I'm a criminal, come here. Like, you have to be a really, like, have that detective mindset. That's how it's been. But also continuing on my monologue, that when I want to take it to the tactical and practical level, I think there also needs to be this big picture, like really big picture understanding, because like the big understanding, the point is that when you understand how the system works, then you get kind of red pilled, and then you don't believe the advertisements anymore. You actually don't even believe the science anymore. You don't believe the officials or the authorities that tell you to eat these ultra-processed seed oils and these refined carbs because they are now the health thing. And it's been quite sad to see that around the world. 20 years ago, I went to Thailand and some other countries around there in Asia, and the food was so good. It was ridiculously good. And I actually, like, most of my health challenges just dissipated just by being there. And then when I came back to Finland, all those health challenges quite soon came back. But then 10 years later, I went also back to Thailand and some other countries there. I started seeing like some health food stores that had those, like, that advertised like all those healthy things, those officially healthy things that are like super artificial. And I felt so sad, because I felt that these people are going in the wrong direction and there's nothing that I can do about it. At least in Finland, I have like some followers in social media, so I can talk about these things. And in like some like developed Western countries or whatever, the tide is already maybe going a little bit in the right direction. Like, people are waking up. But maybe in some other countries, at least 10 years ago, I kind of saw that the tide was going like from really good food to very bad food, and like that's just how it's gonna go, and it's quite sad.
No, I mean the word healthy has become so controversial, right? Like you rightly said that there are so many of these healthy food stores right now, like in my neighborhood as well. But when you go there, especially in India, if I tell you right now, like the idea of healthy still needs, there's a big gap that needs to be bridged, right? Like for us, just going to a restaurant and not ordering something that is made out of refined wheat flour is healthy. So if it's not refined wheat flour, it's healthy. So it's very basic right now, right? Like in the health store would also say that, you can take this because it does not have refined wheat flour. But what about the other things that it has? It has gluten. It still has so many other things, right? So level has to still be, upgraded a lot for our understanding of what healthy really is. So to begin with this exactly, what goes by a thumb rule for you when you go out in the store and you're buying something and it already says healthy on it, or it says like if you're losing weight, like have this stuff like that, right? Like such brands, what goes by a thumb rule for you? What do you check on the brand or the label? Of course, this can depend from it's different for every country, right? Because there's so many packaging differences and everything. But what would you think is something that's very universal and easy to have in our mind when we are going shopping and to determine if this really is healthy, and some ingredients that could be red flags in the product?
I think one solution to this whole problem of like all this healthy advertising and things like that is like become a super biohacker encyclopedia mind, like have so much information in your mind that you just know all these details. I think another more natural solution is to actually go back a little bit. Like for example, the author Michael Pollan used to write so much about like these simple food rules, like if your grandmother wouldn't recognize this as a food, then don't buy it. Those kinds of things. I think that's a very good practical solution for pretty much everybody, because everybody's not gonna become a supermarket shopping expert who knows like all the right brands. Like just skip all that stuff and just go for the actual ingredients. Like if you buy a ready-made guacamole, maybe it's a good product, maybe not, like usually not. But if you're a real detective, then if you're on the mastery level, then you can buy kind of artificial stuff but still find some good ones. But if you're just like a first day beginner, then just go for the real avocado and like Google what goes into guacamole recipe and buy those things too and make that. But of course I know that we all are starved for time, so we of course need some ready-made products also, but then look for the ones with shorter list of ingredients and of course like shorter list of chemicals. Like I think it's a good rule that some people say that don't count calories, count chemicals. Like forget about calories, but try to minimize the amount of chemicals that you eat. Of course, some of the chemicals you don't see in the label, but some you do. So don't buy those labels that have lots of chemicals like these E-codes or whatever, or just some like difficult words that seem like some chemistry class. So those are just like really good general rules. And also one thing that works for beginners is that whatever you buy, if it's organic, then it's not gonna be too bad. Of course, it's not guaranteed that it's like the best possible food that you could ever buy, but it's quite guaranteed that it's not gonna kill you, or like it's not super bad, at least. Like there are many of these labels, like in Finland we have this sydänmerkki, like a heart symbol, which means that it's heart healthy, which means that it's definitely not. Like it's just a business. Like there's this like kind of a company who just selling those heart symbols to pretty much anybody who just buys them, but it kind of has a veneer of authoritativeness in it. People think that it's some kind of official thing that, okay, like there are like scientists behind it or something. No, it's just marketing. So there's tons of those, but I think of all the labels that you can look for, the organic in pretty much any place in the world, it's quite a good thing. But then again, like in the mastery level, you learn sometimes the even better products are not actually even labeled organic, but it's like case by case. You don't really know until you're in the mastery level. And oftentimes you can find at least as good as the organic one with the lower price if you know what to look for in the non-organic part. But also like in the mastery level, you actually don't even go to the supermarket that much. Like if you want the really good stuff, you actually skip the supermarket and you actually go direct to the let's say to the local small farm or something like that. But yeah, there are levels to it.
Absolutely, and we are lucky enough in India that every street would have a local farmers market. I mean, there is the
Oh,
local
that's so nice.
vegetable vendor. Yeah, like I mean, it's there might be 10 in my areas itself, but still, with the whole modernization of things, like we still find it comfortable to drive a little further and go to the Nature's Basket store, the mall, to buy our food. Even though it is just right there down our street, available in a much fresh produce, right? So I think that just making that little change will go a long way. And like you said about the oils, the heart symbol and everything, we have it in India as well. I mean, now that I have the opportunity of speaking to so many speakers like you and learning about seed oils and all, right? Like the ad seems so stupid because they are like switch from sunflower oil to groundnut oil. Like it's the difference is nothing, and it's in the end it's seed oils, and they are telling it that they are selling it in a way that it's good for your heart, so don't choose this but choose this. But in the end both of them are seed oils, and they're just trying to make this whole marketing gimmick for us, right? I mean, that is true. We also have it here on the packaging, etc., and people are actually going to the grocery store and making that difference, and they're thinking it's making a difference for their health, but it's not. So that education needs to happen a lot, like you rightly said. And when we have farmers markets available to us directly, we can always do that, right? And also about reading the labels. I mean, I also read that if you are buying something then and you don't recognize some of the ingredients, just don't buy it, because you just don't know what it is, what is inside it, right? You're not a scientist, or you're not a medical professional, you might not even know what that is. So to buy the cleanest product with the cleanest label could be a good solution. So thank you for sharing that. And in general, what is it that you've learned along the way being a biohacker for your health? What nutrition do you believe in personally? I mean, there's so many of these food wars going on, and completely on opposite ends, right? Like, I mean, one is a carnivore, one is a vegan, and at the end there's just so much decision fatigue for the end user, for the customer or the viewer, that in the end they just don't end up making any change, because there's so many opposite views when it comes to food and what way should be eaten. So what is more important for you? Like, how have you planned your life around nutrition? I mean, is it that you've chosen one particular way of a diet, like carnivore or keto or whatever, or do you just focus more on sourcing the ingredients in whichever way you feel comfortable?
I think a really good distinction is like empowering versus disempowering, and it's really good to just notice so much of the health information and food information that we get is actually taking power away from us to some ideologies or some companies or institutions or authorities or scientists or whatever. And the way to get our power back is to actually start using our senses, like outer and inner senses. And for example, there are so many stories that people find something that works really well for them. Like, for example, yesterday from a friend, I heard this story that some friend of his started doing the Wim Hof method for maybe 6 months or something. He did it and it worked really good, and so much health and so much good feeling from it. And then he saw a video of like some Finnish doctor debunked the whole thing, like based on science or whatever. It's really bad thing, like it doesn't, it's just a scam, it doesn't do anything for you. So the guy stopped doing it, and then my friend asked him, like, was it good for you? Like, and yeah, it was really good for me, but because this doctor. So that's an extreme but a very common example of like extreme disempowerment. We give totally our power away. Like, we don't, like, even if we see that something is good, we feel that it's good, we know that it's good, but then somebody says something, whether it's a doctor or whether it's some like vegan telling us that you should be vegan, or whether it's some carnivore telling, or whatever. Don't give your power to them. Like, why do you give your power to like anybody like besides you? Of course, like when you have your power within you, then you can choose some like really good experts to serve you. Like, for example, you can, if you need a doctor, you can like find the best doctor and like pay them well, so that they serve you, but like you don't owe them anything besides maybe the money. Like, you don't have to obey them, or you don't have to like try to make them feel good by doing according to their will or anything like. But of course, I know that we people, we want to belong, so we don't want to cause any trouble, and we want to be nice. And being nice sometimes is being like really obedient to others, or just doing like others do, or like now I found my tribe, like I'm a vegan, I'm a carnivore or whatever. But I think if I would define my diet or my beliefs in those kind of ideological terms, I would say that I'm a qualitarian, which is a kind of, I don't remember whose word it is originally, but I think that encapsulates pretty well what I mean about my ideology. And qualitarian, it basically just means that I can eat and I will eat anything, but I try to look for the good quality because it just tastes better. Like, I don't even really care about health that much. I just want to enjoy whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm eating, just like any other person who eats potato chips or popcorn or candy or ice cream or whatever. I'm the same biological being who has these urges for certain things. I crave for salt and sweet and fat and whatever, but I just try to find the really good ones, and I kind of make it a lifestyle, a habit, a hobby, just try to source those good things. And that has worked out quite well. Sometimes I feel like it doesn't work quite well enough. Then I will just need to put more effort into my hobby. Like, I'll just have to work on it a bit more, but it is, and it needs to be rewarding. Like, it's not working against myself, because I feel like in our maybe Western society, we kind of believe nowadays, I don't know why, but it's weird. Everything needs to be forced. We need to deny ourselves and maybe other people things that they would like to do. And then if somebody does something they're not supposed to do or does not do something they are supposed to do, then we need to punish them. And also we need to punish ourselves. So I kind of created or somewhat stumbled onto these kinds of ideas. Like, for example, David Wolf was a guy like 20 years ago. He said always that, don't worry about the bad stuff, just add in the good stuff. So that became like one of my pillars in a way. So my model is pretty much that wherever you are in your health journey or your food journey or whatever, you can just add in some good stuff. Like, let's say that my problem is that I'm eating so much candy always. I try to stop, but I always just keep eating that candy. If I add in like 1 or 2 really good like green smoothies into my day, my craving for candy will just go down automatically. Like, I didn't need to develop this superhuman willpower. It just happened because my body was hydrated better and it was more satisfied with all those nutrients and things like that. But let's say that I'm still craving for candy and ice cream somewhat, and I want to do more. Then I can replace, let's say, candy with something that's not candy. It definitely kind of fulfills the same craving. Like, for example, like really good fresh fruit or coconut water or maybe some organic kombucha or something that really fulfills that same craving. And then also something that I can do is I can actually, if I still crave for candy, I can actually eat candy, but just upgrade the candy to a better candy. Like, for example, in India, I think you have actually, I think it's called actually candy. It's just date sugar or coconut sugar or palm sugar or something like that. And that's like your candy. So that's, to me, as a biohacker, I would say that that's an upgraded version of candy. Like, it doesn't have those chemicals so much or anything like that. Maybe it might have some glyphosate, I don't know, but it's still a step in the right direction. And I think it's important. It's really good always to find steps that you can take in the right direction in a holistic way. If I just use my willpower and force myself to do something that's maybe, or for example, eat something that I know is healthier, but it doesn't feel good and it's very difficult and I don't like it, I don't think it's, in like every sense of the word, it's not the right direction. I think right direction is the kind of direction that you can just keep walking and you don't hit any too many walls on the way. Like, you can just go that way all the way and like not end up in a really bad situation like 1 week from now or 1 year from now. I think, let's say that I found a really good diet that works for me, but it's very restrictive and it's quite difficult, and it's like difficult for my social life and things like that. But it might work and it might save me from some really bad health problems, at least for a while. But then like 1 year, 10 years from now, I might find out that, for the past 10 years, my life has actually been quite restricted, quite lonely, not so fun. Like, I miss those old good days when I didn't have to restrict myself so much and I could just go out with friends and just be more free and maybe focus more on some actually goals and not just focus on like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And of course, I realized that sometimes still you also need willpower, and you need to keep yourself from doing certain things, and you need to force yourself to do certain things sometimes. But like Dave Asprey says, the famous biohacker, that our willpower is somewhat limited. Of course, you can increase it in many ways, but still it is quite a limited resources for even the best of us. So use it wisely. And I think using, like, depleting all of my willpower in things that don't actually take me anywhere, that just keep me still, that's not wise. That's not a strategy that will take me onward with life. And when I kind of discovered this kind of thinking like almost 20 years ago, I remember that for a long time my life was just such an upward spiral, because whenever I used my willpower or mental capacity, I was pretty much able to use all my capacity to do things that take me towards like success or something like that, when other people are just using their capacity on small things, and even things like fighting against their nature. So I just let my nature free, and I'm free to eat anything. But when I eat candy, I actually enjoy it more than the person who is eating like the lowest quality candy, which actually doesn't even taste that good. So that's like a classic example of you can have your cake and eat it too, like literally. And when I started teaching these things more than 15 years ago in my country, nobody had ever thought really like this, at least in terms of nutrition or health. And it was so revolutionary, and it kind of still is. And I'm kind of surprised by it, because it's been like, I've been teaching these things like 17 years pretty much. I would have thought that like the whole country or the whole world would be like, of course, like, why would you use your willpower to get rid of candy, because when there's like so many better ways to do it, so much easier. But I think the reason is that there's a bigger context here. The whole way society is organized is that we are controlled by force. Like, for example, if you don't obey some law, the police will first ask you nicely, but in the end there's always force behind everything. So we kind of live in a world, we believe everything needs to be forced, like in the end. Like, things just don't on their own, they're just not gonna go in a good direction. If you just learn to guide things a little bit in a wise way, like find some better candies, or find the green smoothies, find the things that the advertisers will never tell you, find the good things that are kind of secrets, then you can actually live quite freely, more freely than the person who thinks that you just have to always force everything, and you have to punish yourself constantly if you do the wrong thing, and things like that. It's like a really big philosophical change of mind that we would have to make as a society, so that we would be able, so that these kinds of ideas would really spread. Like, in the current environment, these ideas are still, and maybe always will be, so revolutionary that people don't really get it. Some do, and they're like, oh my god, like, I'm enlightened now. Of
course, that makes so much sense. I mean, that definitely is a very fresh perspective, and like you rightly said, it's almost like we have been conditioned to give up our control over the choices that we make out in the world.
Yes.
And get influenced by so many things. And today these marketing and the way they use psychology, all of these things have advanced to a level that is far beyond our understanding on a regular basis, right? So it's important to get back that control in your life, and no matter how little these things might seem, I mean, someone would be like, there's more important things for me to do than to see what I'm buying at the supermarket. It's a small thing, but actually these small things will only help us gain back that control in our life. It'll give us a sense of control and direction in our life when we do these little changes, right? So that makes so much sense. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. I haven't been to India in, I think the only time that I was there, it was, I think, 11 years ago, and I really enjoyed the food there. Like, it was actually, there was this food called Mysore masala dosa, something like that, and I think that still is the best dish that I've ever tasted in my life. It was crazy. Especially the southern Indian food was like the really spicy ones. Those I really enjoyed.
Amazing. Well, we invite you back again. I mean, it's time you definitely visit again.
Yeah. Cool. But if we still go maybe a little bit into the specifics so that people can get some actual tangible value out of this, not just some high-flying philosophy, then I would say
Right.
that like 20 years ago, I pretty much found out that like there are some bad things in our food. It would be good to avoid or minimize those. My model back then was that, okay, I should avoid white sugar and also some other like really refined nutrient poor sugars, and also like most grains, especially like you mentioned, the white wheat, but also usually wheat in general. But I would say that the important thing is to realize that in our current system, the foods that are the most common ones, they are actually the worst ones, because the things that are like cheap and they are like really mass produced, they are not like bred or produced for quality but for price. So that's just something to keep in mind. So some grains are better than others, and the rarer the grain is, the better it probably is for you, like the ancient ones or things like that. But if you buy the most common wheat product or grain product from the supermarket, it's 100% gonna be like really bad for you. And so, but yeah, like the sugars, the bad or the normal grains, and the seed oils, like the ultra processed seed oils or vegetable oils, like they say. Of course, olive oil, it's an ancient oil. These new ones, they are not really. And then also milk products, like not all milk products, but also the most common ones, at least in our country, Finland, we have so much of this fat-free milk, and it's promoted as super healthy because it's fat-free, but it's like super ultra processed in so many ways, and I don't think you should even call it milk. Like they even fractionate it. They use some really
It's a
hard
living
processes to, yeah, exactly. Like they take it apart, like they separate everything and then they put it back together after doing like so many processes to it. So like everybody's drinking that because it's healthy or whatever. So like those four things, I avoided those. And of course I also started avoiding, I put on my things to avoid list also, well, artificial ingredients in general, all these chemicals like monosodium glutamate and things like that, artificial colors, and also alcohol, like that's not really healthy. But then after like some years, I realized that there are levels of quality even to those bad things. Nowadays, like I said earlier, I can and we will eat anything. There's nothing that's off limits for me, but I will prefer the better quality things. And when it comes to, for example, grains, I don't think there are that many grains that are like super good. So I just don't really even crave those too much. I try to eat things that are super nutrient dense, like for example, really high quality meat, or like the organ meats are even more nutrient dense. But also in the vegetable kingdom, you have these superfoods like chlorella, spirulina, but then also, well, that's actually animal kingdom, but you have many things coming from the beehive that can be super healing and medicinal and nutrient dense. And of course you have other kingdoms, like you have the mushroom kingdom, and you can have like medicinal mushrooms there. And the more that I can add this really high quality, really nutrient dense variety into my body, and then I see some whatever grains, I'm like, I don't need that. Like I just don't get the craving really. I'm like, I don't actually even need to eat. Like I'm kind of full of energy and I have better things to do, and then I might go like half of the day without like even thinking about food because I am already kind of full. Not always, and of course depending on the situation. Sometimes I just don't maybe have the money to buy the really weird special things, and I'll just have to eat more normally. But at better times I can have like a really huge variety of like really super things in my body, and also like really high quality supplements. Like I will still, even though I have so many nutrients from the food, I will still supplement at least magnesium and maybe some other minerals, also some trace minerals, also some vitamins, and maybe green powders, or maybe you can actually call that food, but still, and omega-3 fats I might supplement. And it's a very rewarding hobby to first like realize these things, and realize first that like the advertisers are not on your side, and even like many of the institutions are really on your side. Like you just have to like Joseph Mercola, one of my earliest heroes, always says that take control of your own health. And then when you start adding the good stuff into your body, you enjoy it. The food can be really tasty, and then the more you get of those nutrients in, and maybe also the toxins out, that's another thing. And the more you get of those nutrients in, the body actually starts having what it needs. You get rid of the toxins, and then like it can be super rewarding. Like for example, when I started these things, first it took like maybe about 1 year to get to the point where I felt like now this whole multiple sclerosis thing, it's maybe going a little bit better. I had already found like some really good maybe superfoods also, and learned the basic things about like what to avoid and what to add in. And then like 1 year after that, I felt like I'm pretty much healed now. Like I can actually start studying other things, like not just 24/7 just study nutrition and health. And like that summer later, I started playing tennis again, because I used to play tennis like very seriously when I was younger, and I actually got better results than ever before my diagnosis. And like all the doctors were like, you cannot win tennis tournaments when you're diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, like that's not possible. And then like the next year I didn't really do sports, because I had so many interesting things to do. Like I wanted to promote this message or study these things or just enjoy life, but I didn't want to go to those places where you do sports, because in all those places you had like so bad food. Like I just didn't want to go to those kinds of places. So I didn't really do sports, but I started feeling so much energy that when I would just walk to school, like maybe 2 kilometers or something like that, like I just couldn't walk, I had to run. And so then I just tried to like we have this Cooper test, like you run for 12 minutes and see how far you can go. So I was like, okay, let's see if I can do some really good result here without really training for it. And then I did like the way best result, from like way better than ever in my like best sporting times, and it was like so crazy. And then also like in school, when I was eating like super clean, super high quality all the time, as like all the right supplements and all the right hydration and whatever, and even like growing my own sprouts and whatever. In school, like we had these difficult mathematical kind of oriented things that we needed to solve, and my friends would go to the lectures. I was so stoked about like health and life. I couldn't even sit on a lecture. I was maybe 5 minutes then, this is boring, and went to like maybe play the piano somewhere or something like that. And then we would come and try to solve those mathematical problems. And then I asked my friends who did go to the lecture, like, what does this symbol mean? Or like, I didn't know what it meant. And then they told me, and I would just figure all it out like in my head. And then when the others were calculating the result, I just told them the result, because my brain was just working like ridiculously well, and life was feeling like super good. And I felt like I want to promote this message, but I didn't like know how to do it in a big way. And then like some crazy things just happened, that I just kind of got these crazy opportunities. And sometimes I've been like really media darling in our country, even like all the reporters, they want to interview me and ask about all these superfoods and whatever. But then like after that, because I kind of talk, I say it the way I see it. So if a product is really good, I will say that, even though they don't like pay me. But then also if a company is really fraudulent, I will say that also, because I think that's also important. So of course I will get cancelled over and over again, because I tend to piss off all the wrong people, all the people with power. Because the big institutions with big money and big power, they don't make the really high quality blueberries or the small farm things or whatever. So I will always piss off the people who have the most money and the most power, and because they have the power, they can do something about it. So sometimes they do. And then like my life story has been after that that like sometimes like for 4 or 5 years I'm totally out of the game, and because like I get so seriously like character assassinated that nobody wants to or even can work with me, because if they do, they will get cancelled also. So or they will get threats or whatever, things like that. So it's been kind of up and down a lot of times ever since. But the point of all this rant was that if you don't want to be like talking about these things maybe so much, or maybe you want to choose your words more carefully, but just in terms of own health, it can be ridiculously rewarding. Like it's just so amazing, but you need the right information, like the honest information. The information that you get from big institutions, and even science is a big institution. Like it's the most expensive form of advertising, but it's also the most profitable form of advertising for the institutions that actually can afford it. And of course, I'm talking about the really big food companies and the really big medical companies. So that's what you're actually getting when you're getting science. Of course, there are good things in everything. Like there are good things to be found even in the supermarket, and then there are good things to be found in science. But you cannot go to the supermarket and just buy anything and think that it's all going to be good for you. 90% or more of it is not going to be, and it's not even intended to be good for you. So it's same kind of with science. If you just go and I eat the scientific way or whatever, like I read this study that the hydrogenated soybean oil is very good for your heart, so now I eat it. So no, you have to really take back to power and take control of your own health and be really discerning. Like just understand everything that comes to you, like most of it comes from big institutions, and none of them really care about you. So that's just really important to understand, and then you can start finding the things that really do good for you, that you really enjoy, that are really good for you, even if the authorities or the science says that no, you cannot eat real butter because you will die or something. You see that like it makes sense to you. There's a cultural history behind it, and it makes like logical sense, and it feels better, and it makes you feel better. Then just start gathering those, start adding those up, and life can be really good. But then when you start speaking about it, then you will get in trouble.
True, absolutely. I mean, that is unfortunately the harsh truth of the system today, but also it's a good news that we still get to have control over our own life, over our own health with these little changes in our lives, right? So thank you for sharing such a long list of things. I hope our audience is taking notes and that they got everything they needed from this episode. I mean, there's just so much insight you shared in these last 45 minutes, and we are so grateful to learn this from you today. And this definitely provides us much more clarity for our next visit to the supermarket, and also our understanding of the system, and at least perceiving advertisements differently than we used to before, and not believing anything the moment it is placed in front of our eyes, right? And today, because like I said, like science is one of the biggest biggest industries in terms of the marketing and everything, and how we're influenced by it, right? Because today, if you go on the internet and you search for anything, you will find the disadvantages and advantages for both of it. You'll find the research backing up both the things. So that's how confusing it gets. But in the end, you really need to also be intuitive and to definitely believe what you feel is the right choice for you. Also, you can always try things out for yourself, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be like you're going to die the moment you eat something. I mean, unless and until it's obviously poisonous or something, right? But you definitely can see what works for your gut health, what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, and you can definitely plan out these things by your own research as well, right? And not just believe it with one episode or one believe just one health influencer or doctor saying something, but definitely go out there, do your own research, and see what fits your body the best and make a decision. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. We're really grateful for this.
Thanks so much. For the ending, I would like to say that like my book is not in English, at least not yet. So if somebody wants to get more of the details, I would recommend some Michael Pollan books. Like I don't even remember those names, but just Google Michael Pollan and food or something, and you will get like Omnivore's Dilemma or something like that. But then I think probably still my favorite book in English in terms of health and nutrition probably still is Integrative Nutrition by the founder of Integrative Health Institute, Joshua Rosenthal. I think that gives a really good big picture, but also I think enough detail. And there's also the idea that food is not even like the most primary food. Like actually we should live of inspiration and just like love of life and how to kind of navigate those things. So it's a really valuable book.
Amazing. Thank you for that insight. We'll definitely have that for our audience, and also for the ones that don't follow you already, there'll be links in the description below. We can reach out to you, learn a lot more from you, because there's so much you also share on your own socials. So we hope to see a lot more of you in the future, and we hope your book gets translated in English and we can have it to read for ourselves very soon. So thank you so much once again for being here today and for hosting our podcast.
Yeah, see you around.